G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wildkard. Thank you for watching the Wildkard Rugby Show. Like, comment, and subscribe. And yes, you are here today because there will be no Rugby Championship this weekend, which means there will be no record-breaking losses for the Wallabies, which means I can finally get out of my mum's bunker and go outside and stare into the sun, okay? And if I go blind, that's good, because then I can finally stop watching the Wallabies, okay? And yes, you are here, not because I want to rant, you are here for the rugby news. And yeah, the Rugby World Rankings, the Wallabies has dropped one more spot to 9th, with Fiji catching up right on the tail, and Fijians has been doing pretty well in the rugby in the Pacific Nations Cup, so they might actually catch up to the Wallabies and bump the Wallabies down to 10th by the end of the Rugby Championship. So yeah, and speaking of the Rugby Championship, the Springboks has announced their team that will be heading off to Argentina for the first test in Argentina. Second test will be back in South Africa, home and away game between the two nations. And the Rassie Erasmus has announced the squad that excludes 7 players in its current core setup that beat the All Blacks and beat the Wallabies. So obviously he doesn't want some of these players to be overworked, to be burnt out so early in the season. So some very well-deserved rest for some of these players, and also opens up an opportunity for some of the younger players and newer players to play in the green and gold jersey. Now this leaves a little bit of a question to obviously what is going to happen between the two sides. I do think that historically the two teams are actually very close in their matchup in terms of scoring, and both teams likes to go for that goal kicking style in the past. But there has been a clear shift since the Rugby World Cup that for both teams to play a bit more wider and play a little bit of less goal kicking, especially for the Springboks. And how that's gonna go, I don't know. The two games might just go from extremely tight in recent encounters to like maybe just the big scoreline that's gonna be coming up for us to see. So that's probably what I think might happen. But hey, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a very interesting test coming up. And yeah, it's definitely, the Springboks is definitely going to be, you know, potentially sweating a little bit with how good Argentina has been performing, beating the All Blacks in New Zealand and flogging the Wallabies in a record-breaking fashion. And yeah, this will be a very, very important and very, very interesting match, to say the least. That's going to be coming up. So 7 players that have been rested are Bongin Bonabi, Frans Malherbe, Pieter-Steph du Toit, Sasha Vanberg, Ngomezulu, the youngster, Damian Dealinda, Cheslin Kobe, and Willie Leroux. A lot of veterans that, yeah, I think a lot of these players truly deserve the break from the Rugby Championship. Now, let's have a look at who's got the pleasure and privilege to potentially wear the green and gold against Argentina. And so, coming in at the forwards, in the props, Thomas du Toit for the Springboks, Vincent Koch, Ox Inche, and Gergas Dennekamp will be the 4 props for the tour. Coming in at hookers, Johan Huebblad, Malcolm Marx, the 2 hookers. Locks, just Ibn Esbeth, Nicholas Jan van Rensburg, Saman Morat, Ruan Nokia are the locks for the Springboks. Coming loose forwards, Ben Jason Dixon, Sia Kolisi, Alrike Lowe, Huaga Smith, Marco van Staden, and Jasper Wieser, with Jan Hendrik Wessels, someone who's going to be a utility player who plays, who can basically cover hooker and prop for the Springboks, according to reports. Coming a scrum half, Jaden Hendrickse, Cobus Reinach, and Grant Williams come in for the Springboks. For the fly halves, Mani Lebok and Handré Pollard. I think Lebok might get a start this coming up next weekend. Not next weekend, the week after for this match. Lukamio comes to the center, and Jesse Creel, the man that the Springboks really, yeah, I thought he probably deserved the break. He's been so good for the Springboks for so long. He will be once again in the outside center position for the Springboks. Coming in outside backs, Kurdi Adensa, Apalele Fasi, Makazulu Mapimpi, and finally, a utility pack is Kanan Moody, potentially can slot in as the outside center. Maybe he might actually, Kanan Moody might come in at the outside center with Jesse Krill just as a backup for a bit of break as well. So yeah, we'll have to see if that's what Rassie will do. But yeah, very interesting selections, very interesting team, and it's gonna be a very, very big match that's coming up. Next up, so the big captain, Sia Kolisi, has confirmed to return to the Sharks. There has been some talks for a while now that, you know, the Rassie 92 owner wasn't happy with Siya Kolisi's form whilst playing at Racing. He's the Racing 92 owner is the one that said Julian Savea needs a DNA test, who was really bad after the 2015 World Cup. So same guy is criticizing Siya Kolisi, and the Sharks has confirmed that they have signed Siya for the South African side. So bad news for Steven Kitshoff. He's been having a bit of a neck injury, so he will not be performing for 6 weeks for either the Springboks or the URC that's about to kick off. Next up, so obviously the big news, there's pretty big news for both the Super Rugby teams, Australia and New Zealand. On the New Zealand side, losing the Freedom Cup. This is since 2009, the last time the New Zealand lost this cup, and Razor Robertson is under a lot of pressure. And there was a lot of criticism on how Razor managed the bench, especially with Razor only using the bench players in very sparing manner. So Sam Darry did not get any time at all on the field. Asafa Aomoa was on for 10 minutes when Cody Taylor was having a HIA and never was put back on. Ofa Tuanga-Fasi was given 13 minutes, and Fletcher Newell was only given 5 minutes, and he was only given 5 minutes because Tyrell Lomax was sent off with a yellow card. So there was some, obviously the All Blacks was criticized for not able to score in the last 20 minutes, and it seems that the coaching staff really was reluctant to put these players on, thinking that they needed a stronger performance to finish off the game. But I really don't think that was the issue, because these players are all world-class players and have, performed incredibly well. Especially guys like Fletcher Newell, who performed, under Ian Foster in the big stage at the Rugby World Cup. 25, 30 minutes, no problem. So there was really no reason for him to be kept off the field. And I think once again, this kind of showed a bit of an inexperience for Razor Robinson as an international test coach, because he can do this in the Crusaders, in the Super Rugby, to make sure that the team is consistent. But when you're performing at the club level, with the thing with the club level is very rarely does the opposition have world-class players coming off the bench, right? So when you keep your starting team on the field, it's okay, because the opposition is not putting people that's like way better. The bomb squad that's coming off the bench that's making a huge impact, right? So it's not really that big of an issue if you just kept your starting players playing the full entire 80 minutes in Super Rugby, in club rugby in general. But in a test rugby, you really can't, just leave your bench unused, essentially, especially this many players unused at this level and against a team like the Springboks, who is world famous for having the best bench in the world. And that's going to come on with, that's going to just punish your players who are tired, who play 80 minutes already, especially in the forward pack, in the front rowers. So that is something that I was very surprised. And Razor, it was just saying, just a little bit, the match was really close, and it felt like it was just a little bit, didn't quite go their way in the last bit of the test, and that has really, small margins has led them to the loss. But I do think that the issue is probably, a little bit, I think there's a little bit more work for him, for his players to get a bit more consistency, especially the players off the bench. I think he'll probably have to put some of the bench players in the starting positions to give them a bit more time and more opportunity to grow as like an overall more competent player, to be able to have them more reliably coming off the bench to deliver the results that he's looking for. So I think he needs to give him more time in the starting jerseys, potentially against the Wallabies that's coming up, and maybe in the tour coming up in the November series for the All Blacks. Now, the big whisper in the air is the fact that the only, the future that is looking like going to be the future for the All Blacks, Damian Mackenzie is apparently looking at a deal at top 14 with La Rochelle for Ronan O'Gara. Yes. So there's some talks out of the French newspaper that he's looking at potential signing for one season, maybe. But losing Damian Mackenzie for the All Blacks for New Zealand is going to be such a massive hit. He's literally the only guy that's left for the fly half jersey. And Beauden Barrett is 33, 34. He's not going to be carrying on for too long. Someone has to take over the 10 jersey. and no one has really stepped up near, even close to the level of Damian Mackenzie. And the only other option is for them to open up the checkbook and bring Richie Mo'unga back from Japan. And that's going to cost them quite a bit of money because Richie Mo'unga has signed for quite a long time. So they're going to have to, potentially have to buy out his contract to get him back. I don't know how that's going to work, but yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult situation for the All Blacks with Damian Mackenzie going to France. And it's really, really, really sad. In South Africa now, Subu Nkosi has been banned for 3 years for failing a steroid test, a drug test, and he has been given a 1 year off. So he's supposed to be a 4-year suspension, like Elton Jentjies had a 4 years, and he's basically sort of like surrendered to the accusation that he was positive, and they have given him a 1 year discount essentially to 3. And yeah, Francois Steyn, the director of rugby at the Cheetahs, was basically like, a bit disappointed. They did have him for a little of the season, and it did really well for him. And he's just like, he's just kind of like, it is what it is, and they have nothing to do with what he has done behind the scenes. For the All Blacks now, speaking of number 10s, there are some youngsters coming up. But, they're currently one of them in the pipeline is this guy, Revis Rayana. I thought he was actually quite decent for the Super Rugby level, and he wasn't actually given that much opportunity at the Crusaders under Rob Penny, which I was very disappointed. I thought his goal kicking was quite good. That's probably one of the most important thing. And then he has the fundamentals down. I just think that he needs more time, needs more experience to handle some of the high pressure situations. And he wasn't just given, he was given very little time, very, very little time for the Crusaders, and I was very disappointed. But he's signed for another couple of years with the Crusaders. Maybe they can build him to something. He definitely has quite a bit of talent there available. Another guy that can potentially come up, but it's still a very long way away, is the son of Carlos Spencer, has signed with the Blues. Peyton Spencer. He looks just like Carlos, actually. And he signed for the Blues, but he's still very, very young and is only 20 years of age. And we'll have to see. Is he going to make a huge splash as soon as he comes into the scene? I don't know, but his daddy was pretty good of a player, one of the greatest All Blacks of all time. So he definitely has the family blood and talent to go with. And we'll have to see if he's going to take up the black jersey in the future for the All Blacks. And yes, let's talk about the Wallabies, the collapse against Argentina. There was a lot of guys talking about, send a lot of messages to me saying like, oh, it feels bad, sorry about the thing, and then a lot of the guys were saying I should be more positive because the Wallabies play really well in the first 30 minutes. They were leading 20 points to 3. I had a really good think about what happened. I feel like unlike the All Blacks, who failed to use the bench at all, I thought the Wallabies actually utilized the bench a little bit too rough, like too quickly. If you go back and look at the timing of when the bench came on, Tupou was taken on the field 35 minutes into the game before halftime, and I think the other prop, or what's his name, Tupou was taken off, and what's his name? I think it was James. Who was his name? Anyway, so both the props were taken off for the Wallabies, like at just halftime or before halftime, and then a bunch of new players basically got put on about 10 minutes into the second half, and that was the time when the Argentinians were kind of like going up on a peaking, or like going up in had like a upswing momentum at that point. And I just think that if you put inexperienced players onto the field when the opposition is in control of the game, you have not stabilized the game yet, that is a very, very big mistake from the coaching staff, because you have a young player coming on who's looking for guidance, and it's basically, the roof is coming down on him. He doesn't know what to do, right? And suddenly everybody's looking at each other. Nobody knows what's happening because half the team hasn't just come onto the field, and you end up getting flogged. And I think that has a big thing to do with what happened to the Wallabies on the weekend. And and which led to a complete collapse. 20 points to 3 at 30 minutes into the game, to losing 67 to 27. Yeah, really, really disappointing and really, really unbelievable turnaround for the Argentinians. And I think that if you go back and look at the timing of when the players were substituted on, it was just like literally at the point when Argentina is starting to peak, there are a bunch of new players that's been put onto the field and nobody knew what was happening. There was no consistency between the players at all. And Argentina just rided on that momentum into a massive record win. Yeah, so there's my, I guess, more calm assessment of what happened. Matt Proctor, a former one-test All Black, has signed with Perth after the Melbourne Rebels have been collapsed. So just more players adding into the Perth fold there. And next up, we've got... So there was obviously the mini Rugby World Cup is coming up in 2026. So there will be basically a tournament play with the top teams, with the final being played in there's supposedly a neutral venue, but there was some push for the venue to be at Twickenham. So Bill Sweeney wants the game to be played at the Allianz Stadium, right? The newly renamed Twickenham Allianz Stadium. And there was obviously a bid from Qatar to be played, for the game to be played there. And they just didn't think that was appropriate for rugby. And obviously there was some concerns of the location, obviously being very, very hot as well. They had the Soccer World Cup there. It was just, it was just, not quite right. But they're really trying to push that the destination to be in London for the England fans, for Twickenham to be hosting this mini Rugby World Cup, the Nations Cup that's coming up in 2026. And yes, so Stuart Hogg has come out of retirement for his first match in France for Montpellier, and then immediately was facing charges for stalking another woman other than his wife. Yeah, so he was having issues with his wife for domestic abuse, and he's being issued charges for stalking. Basically, he was harassing this woman with repeated messages, and after being told not to do so. So, yeah, he's really turned into a bit of a disgrace, isn't he, Stuart Hogg? And finally, a bit more on the Scottish Rugby. Alex Williamson has been appointed as the CEO for Scottish Rugby. They have also brought in Lucy Forner, the guy that was former the director, the high performance for Ireland, then went to Australia, came to Wallabies, and recruited Joe Schmidt for the Wallabies, and now he's working as Scottish Rugby as well as high performance manager, I think. And yeah, with the CEO now being replaced as well, so there's some big changes coming up for Scottish Rugby, and hopefully, yeah, see David Lucifora, this is the guy. So yeah, this is with all these changes to Scotland Rugby, with the current talent pool that they have, they might actually work towards something that is going to be pretty impressive coming up in 2027. So we'll have to wait and see how Scotland will be able to change them around. And yeah, that's the news for this week, guys. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on any of the articles. And have a good weekend. Go out and stare into the sun. No, don't stare into the sun, okay? I'm just joking. Don't stare into the sun. And have a good one. And see you guys next week for the build-up towards the Blood Slow Cup. Cheers.